Good evening. My name is Suzanne Carl-Bruno. I'm a scholar in residence at Jacob's Pillow, and it is my incredible honor to be here tonight with Ronald K. Brown Evidence and these incredible collaborators on the world premiere, Jacob's Pillow Commission, that you saw tonight, The Equality of Night and Day. We're going to talk about that work. I'm going to ask questions and have them discuss this working process for you. I'm going to start with you, Ron, and I'm wondering if you could tell us actually about the origins of the piece. What brought you to this idea of the equality of night and day?
It started with a question and a reaction to John Coltrane's Equinox. I heard it and I was like, this song is so beautiful, a little melancholy. What is equinox? And so I looked it up. It's the equality of night and day. And I remember when I was working with the company, and when I was a kid, I thought that equinox was the beginning of summer. No, it's spring, right? Okay, you needed a jacket, but it was not. School was almost over. Then I had to go from Brooklyn down to North Carolina, and so the beginning of a good time, right? And so that was my memory. It's like, okay. So then I had to figure out, so what is it really? Okay, it's when the day is equal, the equal day, sunlight is nighttime. But is that true? And then last year, 2 years ago, it was, it happened at 4 a.m. How is that an equinox at 4 a.m.? No, I don't understand. But the metaphor of what it was opened me up to ask the question, like, so what are things that we presume to be true in this world? It's like, oh no, you were mistaken.
So you started with Coltrane, and then you brought Jason Moran.
I reached out to Jason Moran right away because I didn't want to use a Coltrane piece. Jawole has a piece also Coltrane, Urban Bush Woman. I said, no, I'll leave Coltrane alone, but I know somebody who could bring life to this idea. And I reached out to this young man, and he said yes. And I was like, what? Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. And Jason, you worked together with Ron before. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Ron and I actually met because my wife, Alicia Hall Moran, was in Porgy and Bess that Ron choreographed on Broadway. And she talks about this moment meeting Ron, because we were fans of Ron, because we would see his company up in Harlem all the time. And so she talks about this moment where Ron was like, nah, this is how you lift. And so Ron went over to Alicia and lifted her, and she was like, Jason, I love you, but Ron is the truth. And so, but I also know that Ron, the way Ron hears music, which is really important for a musician. Musicians are making sounds for each other, for people to hear in their bodies, but then he wants to literally, intentionally set it in the body. So I've watched his work, what he does with Phyllis Hyman, and what he does with Ahmad Jamal. It's like transformative. So it's an honor actually to have the work, him hear it, and then set it into the company. So it's, it's also a hard process too, but Ron has a way of informing the musicians about where it actually lives in the limbs. We otherwise kind of can abstract it in our minds, but Ron kind of elevates it for you.
How does he tell you that?
Oh, he just shows it. He shows it, when you see the extension, right? So in piano, it's a machine, basically. It's an old machine too. So there's boom, boom, that's it. But you have to find depth in it, right? So by the end of one of the movements in here, Joyce is in the center of the circle. And Joyce has this moment, and all of a sudden the phrase becomes elastic, but the phrase becomes elastic for both of us in that time. So sometimes when we're playing music for an audience, sometimes musicians are just thinking about something that is so mechanical that they forget how it feels to people. So when I'm here, I'm playing for them, and they transmit to you, So that's, for me, I need that buffer, and Ron always finds a way of setting it and showing me something very different than I'd ever imagined.
And I understand that you brought Thelonious Monk into this process too. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Thelonious Monk is like mountaintop material for me. But Thelonious Monk is also known for how he uses space. As much as he's known for his dissonance, he's known for the space he leaves around it. And Ron and many other also artists think about Thelonious Monk in the way he uses space. So I wanted to think about somehow the way he uses phrases and then the way he pulls the space around them. So some of the I'd say I might say the formations of my hand are really his formations, right? He shows how the hand can sound like a mountain, how the hand can sound like 10 feet of water, how the hand can sound like a chicken bone, like he shows that. So then how does that, why are you laughing? But that, for me, that is like culture, So it's not just an E flat chord. He embeds so much more culture in it, And that's what so I use that, and we talk about that as a way to kind of also churn up some music.
So, Ron, I understand you actually worked, before you got Jason's music, you were working to other music?
So I was working with the Coltrane and Crepuscule with Nelly that Jason mentioned. And so those were the things we worked on, and Miss Davis's speeches, while Jason sent me stuff. Once he saw the material, he started sending me things. And then, I think it was this year, you sent me five things. I was like, whoa. And you would say, okay, I think this could work, but I don't know. I said, yeah, I'm gonna have to do a lot of work, but this is gonna work. Yeah, it was amazing.
Can you actually tell us about the back and forth process that the two of you had?
So we were in St. Louis at the Center of Creative Arts. Working on all of this stuff. And we did a showing, and Jason saw it probably, I think, on Zoom. That's right. And he said something about, they look like a tributary going into water, a large body of water. I was like, okay, talk to me some more. And then I think in less than an hour, I had some music. Mm-hmm. I was like, this man.
Well, for Ron, I try to throw stuff into the water, because I'm also unsure. Sometimes when I think something is perfect for a company, Ron be like, yo, I can't dance to that. Like, there's nothing in that. There's no space in it for the phrase. So I try to send a variety of work, to see kind of like, well, then what becomes a set of music. The other thing about this music is that it's also set against Angela Davis, one of the clearest speakers ever in the world and clearest thinkers, So we're also listening to her as score material, her as not only simple language that we need for our humanity, but also melody, like also rhythm, and also cadence, and also dynamics and orchestration, and also pause, so she has all that in her, right? So these pieces also need that kind of, that something to jut against it. So that also was something that I would never kind of quite put together, but Ron kind of saw a way for them to live together, Angela and I as Aquarians too.
So let's bring Tsubasa into the conversation. You have a long working relationship with Tsubasa, Ron. Tsubasa, I wonder if you can tell us about, you're responsible for, along with Ron, finding and putting the images that we saw tonight.
Right.
Can you tell us about that process, how you went about finding the images, what you were looking for?
Right. First of all, Deborah Willis she was contributing the images to us. So we kind of researched her books. And then, I brought to Jacob's Pillow too when we had creative residency. We showed to the dancers, and then we kind of looked at the images and what spoke to us, and what kind of relate to the text that Angela Davis was saying, also the music too, the mood. And when we were here at Jacob's Pillow, I think that's when I saw the dancers moving with lining up and doing the circle. And then, so that inspired me to use one of the images that a group of people just lining up, and I think that's for Martin Luther King's funeral. They're lining up, and then that kind of relate to what we were kind of telling to the audience. So that's mourning kind of. So, you know, a lot of like movement, and also the books and what we talked about during the Coco residency too. We also watched Inauguration Day together, and so everything like we talked about and the movement and the music that inspired us. And then when we watched the books and like, a lot of like history behind, but these are so relative to us too. So that's why we saw it's important to use those images from, you know, back then. And we also started a conversation before even we had a pandemic. So that's why some of the, like most of the images are old, but it was very relative. That's why like we chose those photos.
And why did you choose to hang them above the dancers?
So, so I wanted to have that fabric to show the circle too. That's when like I got the idea when I saw the circle movement, and then I wanted to put some circle on stage, but I didn't want to make it full circle. I wanted to make a part of a circle, so that image can be a part of circle, dancers are also part of a circle, and audience can be also the part of the circle. That's why I wanted to kind of not putting behind, but above, so we can all be there and make a full circle. So that's kind of the idea of putting the image up there.
And at some point, the images begin to fade and become
Right.
something else, and air starts blowing through. Can you tell us about that?
Right. The era was also inspired by the costume made by Wunmi, our longtime collaborator, and she also talked about water, and I think she saw the movement, and that reminded her of like water because it's flowing, and then I saw the costume, and it's like, you know, making this. So I saw the fabric can do that too, and also the music. The very end, it's, you know, coming up, and we wanted to make some like movement up there too. That's why we blow that. I wasn't sure if it's gonna work, but we blowed it, and then the image kind of dissolved, and that can be part of the dance too. So that's the kind of idea behind.
Thank you. So you had begun work on this before COVID, I understand. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. So then we're all living in a very different world, and in a difficult time, and there's all upheaval and fear and violence going on. In addition, how did this work its way into what you had already been making?
So the young people taught me how to rehearse on Zoom, and so we were rehearsing on Zoom. I think that last piece they learned most of it on Zoom. I was like, what? And then when we got to our first bubble residency in Catskill, New York, at Lumberyard, they got on the floor for the first time and they were doing upside down. I was like, what? But it was in their bodies from the living room to the studio. It was incredible. And so I think when the police started killing people, we said, okay, let's take a break. We were in rehearsal in person. We said, our spirits can't handle this. We could dance about this once we get some kind of resolution, and then stop killing people like it's okay. And so we took a break, but they just kept talking about it, and so then it kept coming into the work. I said, so let's make this an offering for all of the involuntary martyrs. Breonna Taylor did not want to be a part of Black Lives Matter. That was not her plan. But all of a sudden, how do we celebrate and honor her life? And so we said we could make this piece as an offering to all of the involuntary martyrs. And so that's why I started making the elephant circles. Let's make a prayer circle of compassion and protection for all the people that are killed for no reason, but for hate, right?
Jason, do you feel like the time changed the music you were working on also?
Of course. Like dissonance is not an aesthetic anymore, you know? It's like actual life, right? We leave here and then we go back into an unknown. My blood pressure rises when I go into town and the police are just sitting there. Right? So, and that's normal. That's the normal every day. And so it's not, I wouldn't, part of me, and I'm from Texas and it's an awful state, I left. But part of my pessimism about life, and I want to be honest, is because I've seen enough ugly to know that people just do that, right? It's actually why I became an artist. So I could be around people who were looking for another solution for it, you know, or another way to at least actuate the kind of confusion that we live in on a daily basis, like is normal. And the musicians I know who have fought through, and the ones I've studied with and the ones I've never met, have fought through something much more difficult, I think, in developing a language of abstraction on an instrument without words, right? So when you were talking about the thing above, the images above, I also thought of them as super titles, right? Like a way that when we go to an opera, we always see what's happening above, or when we watch subtitles on the television, right? But how do images also become a super title for movement or for music? And I have long struggled with where does the music lie in the struggle, you know? Or where does it lie in the joy, you know? Or where does it lie in the celebration of someone's afterlife? And I've often been asked to bring music to those situations, and that's not fun. It's not why I went to conservatory, you know what I mean? But then I understand why the music is functional. And so the time will always change. It's also different, just also, to be honest, to be looking at Ron's movement and what Ron is now overcoming, you know? To also think about the way the company feels post that too, you know? And the way stillness feels now when I see it in the company versus what it looked like before.
Oh, can you talk about that?
No. I mean, I don't know. Look, well, it's like when we think about Beethoven and we hear all the moments where he's going deaf, right? And we hear that the music is all of a sudden, maybe people are thinking it's going a little bit more wild, right? But, you know, it's like, how do we, my son is a dancer also. He fell down the stairs a year and a half ago and broke his leg, shattered it on his way to Ailey. And he was devastated. And 7 months later, he is in, you know, out of the wheelchair and standing, and now he's in the intensive this summer, right? So I've watched the healing that people do every day. And they do it here, they do it out there. You do it on your drive home when you actually contemplate what you just saw. So the times for me, I play music because I know that I get to bring it again fresh the next night, and that it can be new, right? And that the company can dance it anew again. So I look forward to that, and I want the world to change so that the music sounds different.
Ron, Jason was talking about the stillness in the work, and I'm so used to thinking of you as working with such propulsion and bigness and fervor, and the stillness feels so thoughtful and healing that we're seeing here too. Could you tell us a little bit about your choices about foregrounding stillness here?
So when I started this company. The first concert was 37 years ago. Right. And so when I found the title, Evidence, and it was actually from a Thelonious Monk piece that I did a solo to. But I thought I want to have a company that represents our families, our teachers, and our community, so that when people saw evidence, they would see a reflection of themselves. They would see evidence, yeah? And so it's important for you to see these are talented dancers, but I don't want to just show you they can dance. So we study all this stuff, but for what reason? To share something with you. And so I want you to see them as people. And so that's why stop moving, stand still so they can see the man and woman that you are, right? And then it's so beautiful talking to them, talking to about the, how we are the Most High and all of our ancestors. And then Randall Riley said, oh, so we're like a living altar. I said, indeed, we're a living altar. And so I need them to be still so that you can see the living altar. You see them moving, but sometimes they're moving so much you get impressed, and so you don't really get to connect with them because you see them as something else. A dancer that is something else, not a real person. So I want you to see real people. So we have to stop so you can see that.
I have to say that it's been a hard time recently for everybody, and that I feel like you brought so much healing with you, all of you, and you show us we have so much work to do. Like, we feel so stuck, and we have so much work to do, but Jason, you said sometimes it's hard to see above that, and but I feel like this work really does bring us there. And I'm deeply appreciative, and I know everybody else here too is. Thank you so much.
So, thank you for that. So I was told, was it 2001, someone who did not know what I did in my life as a career said, you know, the ancestors are always talking to you. You hear them, but now you have to obey. He said, oh, that's the most incredible advice I was given. So I tell the dancers, I listen and I will obey. And so I feel like I'm off the hook. I just have to be obedient. Oh, great. And so I tell you guys, there's work to be done, but it's yours. Go out and do it, right? And then the other thing I learned in this past couple of years is like, fear is a reaction and courage is a choice, right? And so we have to stop being afraid, right? Because we knew the militia were hiding, right? For years I knew that, but now, and I was a little worried, but not really, because the United States, right? But now I'm like, whoa, they're not hiding anymore. They're not hiding anymore. But I'm not gonna be afraid, because I know the Most High has us, and we are the Most High. He's magnificent, and so we're a tiny magnificent, but still great. And so the work that He has for us to do, gotta go do it. And I always tell the young people, work for the sake of the work, not for the sake of the goal. The reward will come, but don't worry about that. Just roll up your sleeves and work.
So he's leaving us all with the charge to get to work. We'll do that. Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much, Vasa.